And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations with Jacob. This is season four, I think episode four, and altogether, I think this is episode number 100, maybe 99, I don't know, which I've lost count over the 4 years of doing this. But welcome back to another episode. Before we get started, as usual, it's my podcast plugs or just me just rambling on for a few minutes. You can check out the podcast every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time right here on YouTube. You can check out the website. That's Conversations with Jacob podcast.weebly.com. You can check out upcoming guests, past guests, and you can also check out a new thing on the website. It's called the episode ticker or countdown, which it basically counts down to the next episode. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's my only social media I have. It's Instagram.com. It's Jacob Online. And also, our partners of the podcast is the Sophia Graham Foundation. You can check them out at www.sophiagrahamfoundation.org. And Stand for the Silent, it's an anti-bullying organization. You can visit them at www.standforthesilent.org. And speaking of Stand for the Silent, Kirk Smotty, the president of that organization, will be here on the podcast. I don't know, maybe sometime in March, which I've been in contact with him for a few weeks now. My guest this week is Angela Lenhardt. She's a life coach, an energy hitter, and she's the author of two books, A Charmed Journey and Trigger the Wonder Horse. Angela, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for the invite. And it'll be so much fun. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And now, for people that don't know a lot about you, can you give us some background or maybe the longer version and that I didn't read here in front of me?
Well, as you said, I'm a life coach, an intuitive life coach. I'm author of two books, A Charmed Journey, which is my memoir into seeking health and happiness, and what revealed itself to me, himself through that process, was God in miraculous ways. And then I went on to write the second book, which is actually the second edition of the second edition of Trigger the Wonder Horse, memoir of a spiritual warrior. So that is my writing experience. I also teach workshops, pretty much focused on women, health, wellness, spirituality, and that's me in a nutshell.
Now, and what led you to write two books? And also, and did you ever think and that you would ever write a book?
No, writing a book was not on my agenda. But through my life's experiences and my process of own healing and transformation led me to write my first book, A Charmed Journey. You see, as I said, I'm a life coach, and I think in order to coach anybody in a particular subject, you kind of have to have a well-rounded view of what it is to fully live life. And I felt like I've had quite a few life experiences which have gotten me here today, which have been focused around healing. I've always been interested in and wanting to know about how the mind, the body, and the spirit work all together in conjunction to who we are as a spiritual being having a human experience. And I've always had this passion to serve God, to serve God in my way, how He designed me, which led me to write my books and the spiritual journey I had into learning life lessons. So my journey began. I graduated from college. I kind of did the traditional route, high school, went to college, and then graduated and decided, okay, I have a business degree, but what is this going to do for me? What am I doing? So I got into, the investment banking world, and I soon realized that was not my path. And the impetus behind that was one night my mom just passed away in her sleep, and it was totally unexpected. And what had happened was I was driving home from work one day, and I called her on the phone, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm getting ready to go." And I said, "Well, where are you going?" And she said, "Home with the angels." And my first response was, "Well, are you drinking again?" Because we had that history, or she had that history. And she says, "No, I love you, and I'll see you again someday." And she hangs up the phone. So she hung up the phone, and I immediately called her back because I was going to yell at her, like, "What are you crazy? What are you talking about? What are you thinking?" And I did call her, but she didn't answer. And at the time I was married. So when I got home, I walked into the door and I said to my husband, I said, "My mom was being so weird." And he says, "Well, what was she doing?" And I said, "She said that she'll see me again someday." And she hung up the phone. And he's like, "Well, maybe she was just having a bad day." Well, I went to bed that night, and the next morning I got up like at 5:30 in the morning, and I just went and sat in the dining room, and I sat in the dark, and he got up, a few minutes later, and he says, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm waiting." And he goes, "Well, what are you waiting for?" And I said, I don't know." And about 5 minutes later, it was my aunt calling me to tell me that my mom had passed away in her sleep, and my grandmother had found her. My grandmother and mom lived together, and from that moment, I began to ask myself the deeper questions, like, what is this life all about? What are we here to do? Which then led me on the trajectory of self healing.
Now, and how did losing your mom change the way that you listen to yourself?
Well, I think it isn't until we come face to face with a crisis, right? And there's pretty much three subjects in life. We have money, health, and love. Everything revolves around those three things. And when you lose all your money, or you lose the closest people to you, or you lose your house, your security, it takes you to that depth of brokenness. And that brokenness forced me to get really centered and focused on God, and to understand the grieving process, and our connection to this life, to this life in itself. And I've always had a strong affinity to nature. I grew up on a farm, and growing up, I would come in to the house, and I remember I would say to my mom, "How do you do this?" Or "How do you do that?" Or "What's wrong with this?" Or "How do you fix that?" And her response to me was, "I don't know, go talk to God about it." So what I would do, I would go outside and I would sit in the pasture, and I would sit with either the horses or the bulls, or the cows, whichever was around that day. And I would just sit there, and I began to study nature, and I began to ask God questions that I had at that particular time in my life, which is still my method of operation to this day. Whenever I have a question about anything, I go within, and I ask. I pray about it, and oftentimes I'll go outside and I'll just sit outside in nature, and I begin to commune with God, and that is how I've led my life to do what I do today.
Now, do you think, because you mentioned about going out and talking to the animals, and do you think that they understand and what we're going through?
You bet I do. I don't know. You bet I do. I don't know if they can say, "Well, she's having an off day because of this," or because of that, they can't rationalize that, but they do feel our hearts. I 100% know that they do, and they know that when we are hurting and we are grieving or we are worried, because you can tell just by the way that they react. And even in the bible in even in the Bible, Job 12:7, it says, ask the animals, they will teach you, or and the birds in the sky, they will, or ask the birds in the sky and they will tell you. So it is written to take care of your animals, to be good stewards of your animals. And I think in return that they give us the wisdom, they give us healing, and that's the way that God organized it, so we can maneuver our way through life with companionship and protection and have a purpose, is through our animals.
Now, how after your mom passed, and how did you handle the grief?
One day at a time, like anyone. And she passed away. Well, I'm 50. I'm 53 now. She passed away when I was 24. So it's been over 20, 25 years, 26 years. And I think over time the grief softens, and it never really goes away. But how I handled it was, at the time, and this was 25 years ago, you really didn't go talk to a therapist, or I didn't have access or the resources to talk to a therapist or anyone. And all of my friends, they still had their parents, so I was the first one, I think, in this position to not have a parent. And it was a struggle. I sought out certain teachers when I could, or I read a lot of books on grieving, because that was what was accessible to me. I cried a lot. I think crying is a way to grieve. You journal about it, and you remember the good times. You focus on all the good, but it's inevitable that the bad times come up too, because that's the light and dark of life. That's the process. That's the journey. And it's every day you reflect and you contemplate, and you sit with God in that space, and ask him to help you just move slowly through the process of grief. I I've had to work through grief quite a few times in my life. It began with my mom, losing my mom unexpectedly. And then I have lost, I have had dogs and cats, and I've been with them their whole journey. I don't, I'm one of those people that if you have a responsibility, you tend to that responsibility through the duration of their life. You just don't give up something because it's an inconvenience to you. That doesn't work for me. So I've always been with my animals through the duration of their life and through their death. And when Trigger died, my beloved horse, he passed away about 3.5 years ago. It took the rug right out from underneath of me. But I also knew that his life was coming to an end. I mean, he was 44 years old.
Wow.
Each day was a precious gift. And every day I would just walk in faith that he would be standing. He would be standing. And I always prayed. I always said, God, don't make me have to take his feet out from underneath of him. That was my, I said, God, please just don't. I wanted him to already be down. I didn't want to have to take his feet out. And that was the gift. Trigger, the day that Trigger passed away, he chose the day. And that particular morning, everyone at the vet clinic who had ever worked on Trigger or had cared for him happened to be there that day. The animals, the dogs, and the dogs that had been with him in his life while he had been staying at the vet clinic were there. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful day. The birds were literally singing. The sun was shining. He couldn't have planned it any better. And his feet, I guess he fell down in the middle of the night and he waited for me to get there that morning. So that grieving process, man, it was a tough. I had to make myself get out of bed. I had to make myself go for a walk. I had to make myself eat healthy foods, because I think when we have such a heartache and losing something that is so near and dear to our hearts, we tend to do all the things that we shouldn't do. And I've been down that path too. We'll eat too much, we'll maybe drink substances we shouldn't, we don't exercise, we become complacent. And yes, you have to give yourself time to grieve, but you also have to dig yourself out of the ditch and get up and get moving. So that it's a delicate balance.
Now, how do you define intuition in practical everyday terms?
Intuition.
Yeah,
So you want to know how I define intuition?
yeah.
So intuition is your intuitive sixth sense. So it's your intuitive knowing. It's that internal God voice that I think there are different ranges of intuitive knowing, and I can go into that a little bit. First of all, it's powered by the Holy Spirit. So it's that God Spirit that moves through you, that says move this direction, move that direction, where it's that internal power, it's that fire that moves through you. So first and foremost, that is where I come from. But I think that sometimes we're not always in tune with that internal voice. So whenever I teach workshops or teach clients about honing their intuitive skills, I always say use your body. Use your body as a compass, because the body is a very, very wise vehicle, right? The body houses the soul, and it's kind of like that. It's like your car that gets the soul around. So when your body begins to send you signals, for instance, back pain, knee pain, you have a headache, you even get a cold, those are like indicator lights that are going off saying beep, 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 something's wrong, right? So it's in that moment for us to stop and be present with our bodies and get in tune with what is our body telling us. So we have an ache or a pain. So we have an ache or a pain. And depending on what that pain is, where that pain is, there's usually a thought that is accompanying that pain. So the pain doesn't just manifest for no reason. There is always a thought process behind it, an emotion. First there was a thought, then there was an emotion, and then when you keep ignoring it over and over and over again, then it will manifest into the body. So nothing just happens to the body. And I learned about, and this is traditional Chinese medicine. So this is ancient wisdom that's been passed down for 5,000 years on how the body works. So this isn't anything new. This isn't, this is old stuff. Go outside, sit in nature, eat herbs, sit under the sun, let nature do the healing. And when you understand that the body is just a bunch of, it's 11 different systems. So, we have everything from the circulatory system, the muscular system, the lymphatic, it goes on and on and on. When you understand how the mind, the body, spirit all work together, you can, when you address the thoughts, when you address the emotions, you can heal the body.
Now, how do you know the difference between a fear and intuition?
Well, those are two totally different subjects. So intuition is your intuition. So it's like your intuitive knowing. Like you wake up that morning and you have a thought in your head that says, I need to call this person today. That's intuition. When you get up, that's one part of intuition. Another part is Say you are working at a job that you hate, and you're driving to the office, you park your car, and all of a sudden you have all sorts, you feel congested, you start coughing, you start wheezing, your muscles hurt. That is your body telling you this is no longer the environment for you. So that is how the body works. Another way the body works is you walk in. So you are invited to a party. You're invited to a party, and you walk in the door, and all of a sudden, your back gives out on you. That is an indication that beep beep beep. You better turn around and go the other way. So like I said, your body is picking up the signs, the signals, the frequency before you even get there, and it's telling you to reevaluate the situation, make a different choice.
Now,
so fear. Wait a minute. Let me answer the fear question. So fear is, well, according to Chinese medicine, fear is in the kidneys, in the lower back. So when the lower back is locked up, congested, and tight, you are repeating a thought over and over and over in your head about something that you're fearful about. And that is your body telling you, telling you to go within and to figure out what that fear is so you can overcome the fear.
Make sense? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does. Now, and what kind of situations do people usually come to you for?
Well, I started the journey of healing, learning, healing techniques. I started massage therapy. I traveled to Thailand to learn Thai massage. I learned acupuncture, acupressure, cranial sacral, what is the cranial sacral system from the occiput all the way down to the bottom of the tailbone. So like I said, our body is many systems. Wait, what was your question again?
The other question was, in what kind of situations do people? Okay, what kind of situations and do people usually come to you for?
Okay, so they come to me because their body is in some sort of pain, or they need some guidance on how to navigate through a challenging situation. Most often, people are having stress in their relationships, and they need help navigating through a breakup, whether they should break up, how to manage their minds and their emotions during a breakup. So relationships are their priority in our life. They're first and foremost in our life, and who we spend the most time with affects us on every level. So we want that to be a healthy, nurturing relationship, because that will affect the success in our life on in every level. So people come to me because they're uncomfortable with the situation and they want some sort of solution, whether it's in relationships, career. What is that next career? Am I following my soul's highest purpose? Just kind of I help give them clarity about that.
Now, and you're an energy healer, and do you use like crystals and all of that stuff?
No,
Right.
I don't.
All right.
Not at all. I yeah, I never have. I use my hands. Hands-on healing. Although I do love gems. I mean, I love diamonds. They're God's. They're nature's gifts. They're grown in the universe. They're grown in nature, right? I mean, from diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sapphires. These are God's. They're from God's creation. He created this. So I think that if God created it, it's beautiful, and it serves its purpose.
Now, for people that don't know what an energy hitter is, can you tell us what that means?
Well, like I said, the body is we are energetic beings, right? We are emotions. When you break down the word emotion, it's energy in motion. So it is feeling the, it's like vitality. You feel balance. You feel like the left brain, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere are balanced. That's got a good energetic component and creates wholeness so we can think clearly. So I help people balance their minds, through being able to navigate through situations, their bodies through muscles, increasing the circulation, lymph drainage. And like I said, our bodies emanate vibration. They emanate energy. When somebody walks into the room, you immediately can feel their vibe, right?
Yeah.
You can feel their vibe. You walk into a room, you feel a vibe. It's tangible. So you want to increase the vibe, the vibration in our bodies so that we are healthy. We feel good. We feel inspired when, and you can do that through nutrition, meditation, water. All of that increases the vibration within our bodies, which then we have more to give and output to others.
Now, Helen, what was your path in faith, and how did you come to I don't know, I guess to be I guess what I'm saying is, and how did you come to be a Christian?
Well, I've always been a Christian, and I was born in Montana. I grew up a Catholic church. I still love the Catholic faith. Uh, it feeds me, and I know that everybody to each their own. I'm not going to tell anybody to do anything. But I love my Catholic faith. I love the tradition and the ritual and the experience. So that nurtures my soul. Um, I was born that way. I was born Catholic. I just went to church and catechism. But like I said, I really developed and cultivated my relationship with God and nature, and that started with my mom. It didn't. Yes, we went to church, but my connection with God, I wouldn't say began there, but it did. It's kind of one of the same. But when, like I said, when we hit a crisis in our lives, we can go either one of two directions. We can go closer to God, or we can get further away from God. And it always intuitively have known that when I hit crisis mode, which have been quite a few times in my life, I go straight to God. I go straight to God. And sometimes that means I go to church. Sometimes that means I go sit in the sanctuary. Sometimes it means I go sit in the pew. Sometimes that means I go sit next to a lake or the mountains, or I'll just go outside and I'll sit in a coffee shop. And you know what? Some of the most enlightening moments of my life have been when I've been so down in the dumps. And this was right after Trigger passed away. Man, it took. I was devastated. What I did is I went to a restaurant and I sat at the bar. I sat at the bar and I was a wreck. I'm not gonna lie, I was a train wreck. And I ordered a burger and a glass of wine. And this woman came and sat next to me, and she put her arm around me, and that was exactly what I needed at that time. And she let me just spew my emotions. She paid for my dinner, and she gave me her phone number. She says, "You ever need to talk and see?" God drove me to that place at that time when I needed help. I didn't get my prayers answered at church. I got my prayer answered at the restaurant. So, God works in all of us in many different directions, and he does guide us to the people that need to talk to, or the animals that we need to be around to help us through our healing transformation process.
Now, now, do you think that do you think God and sent that woman to you that day to kind of comfort you a little bit?
Do I probably. I don't know if he, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did, because God is organized. God is extremely organized. Nothing that he does is random. So he probably knew I was going to go to that restaurant, and he's like, I'm going to set somebody right next to her that can deal with her tears. And it just happened to be that amazing individual that day. And it was symbiotic. So God has a plan for each and every one of us. And it's when we tune into it and listen and become very obedient is when we discover how divinely orchestrated our life truly is.
Now, let's talk about the power of prayer. And I'm going to ask you right now, it's how powerful do you think prayer is?
It's your superpower. It is the power of prayer. It is that. I don't even know how to explain it. It's beyond words. But when the power of prayer is. Let me share with you one experience about
Yeah,
that I had with prayer. So this was when I first I adopted Trigger. I adopted him. I got him from somebody who needed to get rid of him immediately, so I adopted him. And it was one afternoon. It was pretty new in our relationship, and I didn't have time to take him for a ride that day, so I decided to take him for a walk. And what I wanted to do was walk him over to this lake. But in order to get to this lake, I had to cross two highways. One was a pretty busy highway, and the second one was not so much. Anyway, I was on foot leading Trigger out to this lake. So we get to the destination. We cross the 2 lanes of highway, no problem. We get there, and I ended up sitting on a tree stump. And I didn't really wrap the lead around my hand, but I just kind of had a loose grip on it. And all of a sudden, a deer jumps out of the bushes, startles Trigger, and he starts heading for home. So he's running as fast as he possibly can for home. And I don't know if you ever tried to chase a horse that's frantic, but you're pretty much not going to catch him. Yeah. Anyway, I'm headed off after him. I'm running down this trail as fast as I can. I have cowboy boots on. And I could see that, he's running as fast as he could go. And I was worried. First of all, I didn't know if he knew where he was going, because we were new to the property. And then, but my biggest fear was, how was he going to cross those 2 lanes of highway without getting hit by a car? Because the people that were driving on the highway were going at least 45. And when he was going to come out on the highway, there's no way they would be able to see him. So I'm chasing after him. I'm watching him. And the trail kind of goes up and down, and I saw him go down, and then I saw him come up, and I thought, okay, that's fine. And then all of a sudden, I saw him cross the first lane of highway, and he's headed for the second one. And right then and there, I began to pray up my deepest level core prayer that I possibly had within me, and I said, God, if horses have angels, can one appear right now? And right then I went down the ravine. So I lost sight of Trigger. And as I come up, he's standing next to a woman who I had never met.
Oh, wow.
There wasn't, and on this trail, there's no people, there isn't anyone around to even be standing there. I mean, this isn't a trail for humans to be walking on. This woman out of nowhere caught Trigger right before he left out onto the highway. It would probably killed himself. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I'm sweating, Trigger sweating. We're both just crazy. And I get to this woman, and she hands me the lead. And all I could say was, like, I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. I had so much gratitude. And then I said, how did you catch him? And she said, he looked like he needed help finding his way home.
Mm.
Hands me the lead. And I just looked at him and I'm just like, I could not believe it. I go, let's go. And I turned around and I knew if I turned around, she would be gone. I turned around and she was gone.
How about that?
So that's just one of my stories. But yes, the power of prayer absolutely works.
Now, Helen, do you think everybody's got a guardian angel?
I do. I think that we were all born with a guardian angel that stays with us throughout our lives.
And
I also believe
oh,
I believe in guardian angels, and I also believe in archangels and God's heavenly kingdom.
now, now moving on to the next topic, and let's talk about miracles. And have you ever experienced a miracle?
Well, I just told you about
Oh
one
yeah, that's
where
right.
I just told you about one where a woman appeared from nowhere. Um, yeah, I have experienced miracles with people for people as well. Most of them are around animals, just because I think I love them so much. I'm in tune with them and want them to survive. And there was I guess another miracle that had happened was this is when my cat saved my life. So this is when I was living in Idaho at the time, and I was renting a room from like three other, one other person, three other people lived there, and the guy that lived there, he had gotten this cat for his birthday. Now he didn't want a cat, and he wasn't going to take care of this cat. And I was living there, and there is no way I am going to let an animal go without care under my watch. So I took care, and I named this cat Stud, because he was a stud. He was orange and he had five toes on each paw. Anyway, I fed him, I cared for him, and then I was getting ready to move out, and the thought occurred. I was sad because I was going to leave Stud, and then I thought, no, I'm not. I'm not going to leave this cat. I'm going to take him with me. So I deliberately moved out in the middle of the night so I could steal the cat, and I did. So I loaded up my car, took off in the middle of the night. And at the time I was bartending. So I left at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was driving to Montana because that's where my mom lived. And so I had to drive over two passes to get to Montana. And about, I think maybe an hour into the drive, I had Stud in the car. We're headed out. I had a Honda Prelude at the time. I'm driving and I fall asleep at the wheel. And all I remember is waking up, going straight down a mountain, and Stud jumps on my shoulder at that time. I wake up and I pull the steering wheel out, like I jerk it, and my car landed back on top of the interstate, and Stud is sitting on my lap.
Oh wow.
Or standing on my shoulder, and he was on my shoulder the entire time, the rest of the time home. And it was like at least a 10-hour trip, and if it wouldn't have been for Stud that night, I would not be here today. So I saved his life, he saved mine.
Oh yeah.
And I think all of our animals are in tune with us and have that ability to save us on some level if we listen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now with your two books, and what can people take away from them?
I wrote those books because I wanted to inspire hope. I wanted I wanted them to be able to, first of all, pick up my memoir, because nothing has been handed to me my entire life. I lived in a foster home for, at 14 for 2 or 3 years. So I didn't come with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to work for it. I also had to work for my own healing and wanting to live this life that God gave me. And after I So I want them to be able to pick up my first book, A Charmed Journey, and to recognize their own healing and life lessons in that, and to see how maybe God is orchestrating, the universe is orchestrating certain events to take place to reveal to them how they've created the conundrum that they're in and what they need to do to heal that part of their life, to change that part of, to transform it. So I wrote that book to help them heal through personal transformation. And then the second book, God forced me to write both books. And then my second book, Trigger's book, because of our experiences and the supernatural and the miracles that I experienced. And I had to share it with people because I wanted them to look for the miracles in their own life. I wanted them to really grow their faith and in power of prayer, and to love Jesus with all their heart and all their soul, and to just rest in him when life gets you down. You have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and carry on.
Now, how long did you have Trigger?
Over 20, 25, 20 plus years, 22
Wow.
years, a long
Wow.
time. He passed away at 44. Most horses don't live that long. Wasn't even able to ride him the last 5 years. He was just my BFF, my soulmate. I would do anything for him. His living expenses even cost more than mine. And when God talks about sacrifice, I think he's pretty serious about that, because I'm pretty sure Trigger had a great, amazing life, and I sacrificed, and I do it all over again. I rented rooms from people. I didn't travel. I didn't go places. I didn't do the things that Angela wanted to do, because Trigger's priority. He was my priority, and his health came first.
So, and was it hard taking care of a horse and than it was a dog or a cat?
It's a different kind of labor.
Yeah.
A dog. I see so many people that they have a horse and they turn it out and they never go see it. Well, that isn't me. I went out and saw Trigger every single day, sometimes twice a day. You feed them, you give them grain, you feed them good hay, you make sure that they're taken care of. You are a good steward. And my dogs, I took them for walks every single day. I think that's why God gave us dogs, because they improve our health. First of all, they give us unconditional love, and they get us outside to exercise. I mean, who doesn't need to get off their butt and exercise? Go outside, walk your dog, be in the present moment, look at the trees, throw the ball, and appreciate the gift that is given to you, and it doesn't cost a dime.
Absolutely. Now, Helen, do you got a favorite Bible verse?
I do. Well, I have a couple, but my favorite one is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. And when I have found myself in situations when I've been I had to act quickly, whether it was jumping in a lake and saving someone else's dogs, or helping picking somebody up off the street. I immediately go, well, I can do all things through Christ, because I can't do it, but through Christ I can. And you just allow God to move through you. You are his vessel, and to be that extension of God and do whatever he asks of you at that particular moment. So yeah, I can do all things through Christ.
Now, you mentioned about jumping in a lake and saving someone's dog. Can you tell us about that?
Well, this is when I had my two dogs, Duke and Dakota. They're my favorite, my labs that I had forever as well. And we were at the dog park one day, and I think it was the middle of January. It was a really cold day in January, where the type of cold where you had to wear two layers of sweatpants and a couple of sweatshirts. And but they were labs, so they loved it. And I was at this lake, two huge lakes. It was a dog park, and there really weren't that many people there. There's a few diehards, but there was this one couple who I'm just going to tell you like it is. He was wearing a leather jacket, nice jeans, dress shoes. She was pushing a carriage, and they weren't dressed for the weather. They had a dog. They were at the dog park, okay, and they're throwing a ball for Fido, onto the lake. And I knew the lake was frozen up until it wasn't. You don't go into the middle of the lake, especially because it's deep. Well, anyway, I was almost done. I was done with, we were done walking, and I literally opened up my truck to put the boys in, but I saw this couple, and I saw this guy throwing the ball. And then something told me, don't leave yet. Don't leave. So I thought, all right, I had the time, so I'm going to take the boys around the lake again. So I shut the hatchback, and I began to follow this couple, and the guy is throwing the ball. And I said to him, don't throw the ball onto the lake. It isn't frozen. Your dog is going to fall through. I said that, I know I said it at least once, if not twice or three times. Sure enough, I'm following, they're ahead of me. I'm following him. He throws the ball. Dog runs out onto the ice, falls through. I'm standing there, there's only them, me, and maybe one other couple. And I said, go get your dog. And he starts jumping around on the shore like a grasshopper. And he's like, come on, Fido, come back. And I said, your dog can't climb up on the ice. You need to go in and get him. And he goes, I don't know how to swim. And no dog is going to die under my watch. So I took off a pair of sweatpants because I had another pair on, and I took off my sweatshirt because I had another one on, and I threw out my keys and my cell phone. And I just jumped in, and I started breaking ice as I go. And my dogs thought it was the coolest thing ever that I'm in the water with them. So they're coming in after me, and I'm breaking ice to get to this dog. And right when I got to the dog, he started to drown, and he went under, and I took my foot and I grabbed him. I was able to snag his collar with the tip of my toe. I was able to pull him up, and I grabbed him by his collar. And right at that moment, I realized I was in the middle of the lake and it was cold. Up until that point, I had no idea it was cold. So I started backpedaling back, and I just kept praying, God, get me back, get me back, get me back. And then Duke, my dog, came and got, grabbed onto the side of the other dogs, or the guy's collar, the dog's collar, and we got back to the shore. And by that time, they had called the fire trucks, and they all showed up. And I got into some big trouble because I, jumped out on the middle of the lake. But I said, you know what? I would do it again. So just don't put me in that situation, and we're good.
So you've been an animal lover ever since you was basically born.
Born. I think I came out of the womb loving animals.
Now, and where can people contact you or check out the stuff that you're doing?
Well, I have a website, AngelaLenhardt.com. Trigger, the Wonder Horse, has got his own website, and I am on all forms of social media. So if people wanted to, are interested in a session of life coaching, or I could work with them for 30 days, I do a boot camp to really help the transformation process. We can work together that way. So my name's pretty much everywhere. Everywhere on the internet,
All right.
along with my story.
And also your books are on Amazon, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Correct. Yes.
All right, and I want to thank you for coming on the podcast to chat for a few minutes, which I greatly appreciated. Which I know we were supposed to do this a few days ago, but I'm to blame for that one. But which I'm glad we got it done today.
Absolutely. It was fun. Thank you so much for allowing me to share and inspiring your audience.
Yeah, and before we go, which I always ask a guest, um, about every guest that I have on the podcast, which I always ask if they got a closing thought for the people watching. And so, do you got a closing thought?
When life gets you down, grab yourself by your bootstraps, get up and carry on.
Oh, which I think you have that rehearsed, but
that just came. I was like, that's it, because it's inevitable that life is going to throw you a curveball. It throws all of us curveballs all the time. We think that it needs to go a certain direction, and we try to tell God how it's going to go, and God's like, I'm sorry, but that is your will, that isn't my will. And when you really surrender into that, and you understand how you've created the mess that you put yourself into in the first place, and decide to transform your life, you can transform your life, and it can be it's a pretty glorious ride, and God's pretty awesome, and the prayer works, and I'm all for that.
Angela, once again, thanks for coming on the podcast, and we'll put your links and stuff in the description of the YouTube video.
Sounds good.
All right, and that wraps up this week of Conversations with Jacob. Tune in next week for David Lutz, and then Jack Hager, a Vietnam veteran, will be here, and then who knows who might show up. But anyway, so thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week for more of Conversations with Jacob.